Mosher. I'm the chef presently of Alta restaurant. We are located in the West Village on 10th Street. The restaurant's about 7 years old. Our format, small plates, which 7 years ago was way ahead of the curve. It's become a popular format for people now. It offers the opportunity to have an elaborate meal, a very small meal, and everything in between. Originally, I was working as the sous chef at 71 Clinton Fresh Food on the Lower East Side, which was a very pioneering restaurant. It started the big career of Wiley Dufresne, and it was a great experience. And when Christopher Chestnut and Ava Olson, the owners of Alta, were looking for a chef to get this started, they had a friendship with the owners of 71 Clinton. And I was recommended to Chris and Ava, and they gave me an opportunity to get my start here. We started out without any press. We were going to try to operate this totally word of mouth. That way there were no undue expectations of anybody walking into the restaurant. It hadn't been hyped. It was simply we were going to do what we were going to do and see how people responded to it. It grew gradually. Right now the menu holds 47 items, and those items are truly individualistic. They don't repeat ingredients, almost do not repeat any ingredients. They each are their own composition, their own statement. But the menu was very much smaller when we first began. The literal size of the restaurant was smaller. We had sealed off some of the dining rooms. Part of it was a financial consideration. Part of it was simply the need to get open and get something started. So when we began, we only had the bar, which seats about 15 to 20 people, which is deep enough you can dine at it. And we had about 12 seats off the bar in the first dining room section. So we started out slowly comparative to other experiences that I've had with the openings of restaurants. It was not there were no grand opening signs on the outside. It was very word of mouth. We had a very small staff both in the dining room and in the kitchen, and things just grew over time. The size of the menu grew over time, the influences of the menu grew over time, and the service, the whole process grew over time, which was nice because people come to the restaurant today and they're like, how is it possible for you in such a small kitchen to produce so many different dishes? And what was very fortunate for me was coming from day one, that's not what we attempted to do. We attempted to do something a lot smaller and a lot more manageable. And then as my confidence grew, as the staff physically grew, as we found our footing with the style of what we were doing, we were able to slowly build a bigger and bigger menu. I had great luck with bringing in various sous chefs over the years that were also able to add creatively to the process that stimulated my ideas. The owners have been very generous with me about overseas travel. I've been to numerous countries in Europe, and most recently I was in Istanbul in Turkey, which had a profound effect on me. There was a sophistication there, but just a genuine deliciousness to the food, and that's something I try to bring to Alta. I like it to have soul, flavor, things that really taste delicious, but something interesting going on as well, something a little bit unexpected, something you need to maybe come here to get. For me, I think the most important part of what the food here is for me, and what I'm most interested in, and there's a lot of different elements that can go into how a cuisine is built, but for me, composition has always been the most compelling part of cooking. I'm interested in how things go together. We use the farmers market. We certainly make use of the innumerable purveyors that are all over the city. A lot of expertise there in terms of all the various product that a chef can use in New York. But I don't think we don't create a theme based on one particular source of food or one particular perspective on food. people, some restaurants they're very market driven, and that's the meaning of the restaurant. Other restaurants are very cuisine thematic. We do barbecue, we do Korean. I think what we tried to do at Alta, we certainly used Spain as a starting point because of their long tradition of eating small plates, tapas. So we used Spain as a starting point, but we definitely began to incorporate other countries, other flavors. We utilized the farmers market. We utilized various meat and fish purveyors that brought in unusual things. But the key element that I was driving for and do drive for is a harmonious and interesting composition. I've looked into a lot of different places to get a further sense of composition, and for me, composition really speaks of three things. The first thing, the dish needs to have soul, and that's almost an inexplicable element. It's just it's warmth, it's depth, it's care, it's something that just speaks to you without having to be intellectualized or explained to you. You simply eat it, and it's a flavorful, and it's a nice experience. It feels good, and you don't really have to think through it to experience it. And go ahead. I've had the opportunity to have 2 extensive trips to Turkey. There's a number of aspects to why it spoke to me so profoundly. And I think it was actually the food writer Paula Woolford in her book on Moroccan cuisine that actually, in her foreword, that really put the idea of how a really remarkable cuisine comes together. And Istanbul really holds those facets. She pointed out the fact that it's important that it be a cultural crossroads. You want multiple influences. You don't want a highly isolated culture, although some beautiful cuisines do come out of that. But for the sake of what I found interesting about Istanbul was all the different cultures that had passed in and out of the city and the country. Big influence. The second thing was there was a royal cuisine at one point, and by having a royal cuisine, you really indulge people to cook in elaborate ways, which bring out lots of very neat ideas that if you were cooking more just for the day, for sustenance, you wouldn't be so experimental, you wouldn't see so much. Istanbul is an amazing place from the standpoint that it's an ancient city, but it's also a very modern city. And I guess relating it back to the food that I like to prepare, I like the idea of bringing modern technique to rustic, older food, slow cooking, French, older Italian, but bringing it to date with modern technique. And I think that I got that sensibility being in Istanbul. I really felt that there was this soul, this ancient part of the city, a real depth of culture, but at the same time, a lot of the cooking was very fresh, and it was very, very progressive.